Welcome to The Explainer. I am so thrilled you're joining us today because we're unpacking a story that's going to get right inside your head. We're looking at a classic piece of literature that functions as a profound and honestly pretty terrifying psychological experiment. It's a tale about the darkest corners of human temptation and the inescapable nature of our own minds. If you've ever wondered what truly keeps human beings moral when the lights are out and nobody is watching, you are in the exact right place.
I want you to really think about this for a second. Would you kill an unknown stranger for immense wealth if you were absolutely guaranteed that there would be zero consequences? No police, no social ruin, no one ever finding out. Just unimaginable wealth, instantly yours. It's the ultimate Faustian bargain, right? It strips away all those external reasons we have for being good and leaves us with nothing but our own raw, unvarnished nature. Okay, let's dive into this. To understand this ultimate moral test, we're relying on a fascinating piece of academic analysis by Professor Jonathan Acuna Solano. He takes a deep dive into an 1880 novella by the celebrated Portuguese author José Maria de Asa de Queiroz. The novella is called O Mandarim, and as Professor Acuna Solano's analysis shows, it's a story that uses a very simple thought experiment to fundamentally dismantle our ideas about guilt and justice.
Section 1, The Ultimate Moral Dilemma. Meet Teodoro. He's our entry point into this dilemma, the protagonist of the novella. And look, Teodoro is not some evil genius. He's not a revolutionary. He's just a completely ordinary, kind of mediocre, and deeply frustrated clerk living in Lisbon. He feels constrained by his empty wallet, his lack of social status. He basically feels invisible. And it's precisely to this utterly average guy that a terrifying opportunity is presented.
The mechanism of his temptation is incredibly simple. A bell. A campania. He is told that if he simply rings this bell, a wealthy mandarin far away in China will drop dead, and all of his immense wealth will magically, instantaneously transfer to Teodoro. The brilliance of this setup is the absolute isolation of the crime. I mean, geographically, it's on the other side of the planet. There's going to be no physical trace, no blood on his hands, no confrontation. The crime is entirely insulated from any social accountability whatsoever. Section 2, Rationalizing the Unthinkable. So how exactly does an ordinary, law-abiding guy cross the ultimate ethical line? Well, he doesn't do it by suddenly deciding to become a monster. He does it through a very quiet, honestly very relatable psychological process, rationalization. He starts doing the mental gymnastics required to justify the unthinkable. And this brilliantly illustrates a concept modern psychologists like Albert Bandura call moral disengagement. Basically, the cognitive restructuring of a harmful action to reduce personal guilt. Teodoro begins to minimize his victim. In his mind, the Mandarin isn't a breathing, loving human being. He's just an abstraction. He's old, he's far away, he's going to die eventually anyway, right? Teodoro weakens his own moral imagination to the point where ringing a bell doesn't even feel like murder. It just feels like a transaction. Section 3. The inescapable inner witness. Teodoro caves, he rings the bell, the Mandarin dies, and the unbelievable fortune arrives right at Teodoro's door. He completely expects this to be his liberation. He's successfully pulled off the perfect, invisible crime. But here is the massive, ironic twist of the novella. Instead of buying his freedom, that newly acquired wealth buys him a one-way ticket to a living hell. Because while he completely evaded external justice, his internal punishment is immediate and just devastating. Instead of liberation, he suffers crippling nightmares, terrifying hallucinations, literally having visions of the devil. He becomes obsessed, day and night, with the paralyzing thought of the Mandarin materializing right in front of him. I really want you to notice the intense contrast here. The physical act of murder was as easy and invisible as ringing a tiny bell, but the psychological punishment is heavy, it's violent, and it is hyper-visible to his own mind. Section 4. Stages of Moral Collapse. Professor Acuna Solano maps out Teodoro's journey here, showing us that this isn't just some sudden burst of guilt, but a structured collapse of the human psyche when it violates its own core integrity. Charting these stages perfectly captures his tragic arc. He starts in stage 1, the ordinary world, completely consumed by dissatisfaction and envy. By stage 3 and 4, his intellectual rationalization leads directly to his moral collapse. He actually crosses that ethical boundary. Then, in stage 6, he tries a hedonistic escape. He takes his blood money, travels, surrounds himself with luxury, desperately trying to drown out his own mind with pleasure and vanity. But it doesn't work. the guilt becomes psychologically autonomous. And this drives him to stage 8, a desperate physical journey all the way to China to try and find the Mandarin's impoverished family, hoping he can simply buy his way out of his despair. But as we're starkly reminded, money cannot restore life, and generosity cannot undo irreversible harm. The crucial point is that his attempt at reparative justice fails completely. Why? Because the wealth he's trying to use to do good was acquired immorally. The original sin contaminates his every attempt at virtue. He realizes, a bit too late, that you cannot reset a crossed moral threshold with a checkbook.
Section 5, Philosophy of Invisible Crimes. Let's see how this builds into the grander philosophical tensions that Issa Dike Rise is playing with. Teodora's breakdown isn't just a spooky ghost story, it is a profound philosophical statement about how we justify our actions versus what those actions actually do to our humanity.
We're actually faced with two heavily contrasting philosophical frameworks here. On one hand, you have the twisted utilitarian temptation Teodora fell for. He made a radically selfish calculation. One unknown life far away is an acceptable cost for his personal happiness. But on the other hand, we have the philosophy that actually governs his soul, the Kantian categorical imperative. Immanuel Kant argued that we have an absolute moral duty to treat humanity always as an end in itself, and never merely as a means to get what we want. Teodoro turned a human life into a mere instrument for his own greed. He broke a universal ethical law, and his mind simply cannot bear the weight of that fracture.
And this brings us to the concept of the internal tribunal. Look, human society relies on laws, police, and judges to maintain order. But this explainer highlights that our own conscience functions as a supreme ethical judge that operates entirely independently of those legal structures. Teodoro easily beat the police. He easily beat societal detection, but he could not outrun the moral law within himself.
Which leaves us with this incredibly powerful summary from the source essay. The deepest witness to every moral decision is the self. The real tragedy of Omandarim isn't that Teodoro got caught because he didn't. The tragedy is that he realized too late that true punishment for an invisible crime is inescapable self-awareness. He has to live with the monster he became every single second of every single day. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a very modern question. Today, we live in a world defined by distance and digital abstraction. We make choices behind screens, miles away from the people they impact. It's easier than ever to feel anonymous. But as the tragedy of Omandarin shows us, does anonymity truly shield us from our own conscience? When there are absolutely no witnesses around, the only judge left is the one looking back in the mirror. Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive, and keep questioning the world around you.